Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, we would like to wish you a Ramadan Mubarak to you all. Welcome once again to our program Breaking Boundaries. For the next 40 minutes, inshallah, you shall be joining me and Sheikh Ali Ma'sumian on discussing some of the controversial subjects that Muslims might face in everyday life. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Ali. And thank you for being with us once again. Today's subject, inshallah, would be raising children in the West. And inshallah, we would like to open the subject in a way from a perspective of unexperienced Muslims that would like to travel to the West and would like to explore all the possibilities and scenarios that a Muslim should know and what would he expect to face in the West while working and building his own family. So, Mawlai, what should a Muslim expect traveling to the West, and in which ways can he prepare himself in order he'll be able to come to the different challenges that he might face in the West concerning his deen and maintaining his Islamic values and morals?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وأهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين ورحمة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, all the viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings be upon you all, especially in this holy month of Ramadan, in which we are the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to excel in this challenge that is this life, especially in the circumstances that we live, and allow us to pass the tests that are in front of us in these difficult times. Yes, inshallah, we'll be discussing the issue of raising children in the West and having families in the West, and the difference between having families in the West and families from the Middle East and Muslim countries. Inshallah, the technical brothers here can put on the screen the topic of the discussion today, which is raising children in the West, inshallah. I think it's an important topic. It's a topic that has not been enough, and not enough people realize the importance and the significance of how they must treat their children, and how to go about having a family which is successful, both as far as the religion is concerned, as far as the upbringing of a religious family is concerned, and being able to live well in a Western society. It's a fine balance. It's not always easy, but it is possible, inshallah.
MashaAllah. So, could we say that is it the same raising good Muslim children in Muslim countries and in non-Muslim countries? Is it the same?
No, obviously it's not the same. There's huge differences between Muslim countries and non-Muslim countries. The challenges that the children face are different. The challenges the families face are varied. There are complete different set of instructions that one must follow. For example, in the West, the challenges that your children have at school, in society, when they leave the household, are very different to those who live in an Islamic country. That's one. Two, the household that you want to build, so the atmosphere that you want to have for your children once they're inside your house and while since they're inside the home, should be different to that of an Islamic country. So as a whole, the structure is different, the way you look at it is different, and the way you want to go about raising children in the West is completely different to the Islamic countries.
So, concerning Western countries and the approach that Muslims might take in these countries, what are the best ways for Muslims to start adapting and being able to control towards what kind of information might their children absorb in their everyday life activities?
How do you mean exactly?
For example, they have to go to school. So by being at school, they also will make non-Muslim friends. And for non-Muslim people, so many things are not even considered bad or wrong. In our cases, we have haram and halal, and this is where we are basically our whole life is being guided through is halal and haram. So how would a parent be able to guide his child so he may be able to stay in the right path?
See, firstly, with regards to raising children in Western countries, I would say that don't emphasize on halal and haram. Don't put the red lines all the time upon your children. It will make it very difficult for your children to find religion attractive if all you tell them is you cannot do this, you have to do this. This is haram, this is compulsory.
Does it apply pressure to the children?
Of course it applies, but it doesn't apply the right pressure. Sometimes pressure is useful, sometimes pressure is useless, and it has the adverse effect. So it does have the adverse effect to constantly say this is forbidden, this is compulsory, and this is forbidden, this is compulsory. Instead, encourage them to do things. Allow them to enjoy things that are compulsory so that they do out of their own free will rather than having to be forced upon them to do it. Also, what you have to realize is that in the society that they live in, not everything is bad. I agree that in Islamic countries it's easier somewhat to install certain Islamic values onto the children. However, it's not the case that everything that children will learn in the West is useless. No. One of the good things that the children here learn is, for example, certain moral values. Not all moral values, but certain moral values. For example, lying is bad. Racism is bad. There are certain things that is installed through the society that is correct and it should happen. However, there are certain other things that come along this package that we don't want them to. So you have to look at what society is giving your child, the information that they're getting through the media, through school, through their friends, through their communities, and then the information that you want them to get to have. And it's important to give them information rather than just instructions.
Because through the information they get to understand the instructions.
Exactly.
Right?
Because see, it's quite commonplace for families to tell the children to pray and force them to pray. Pray, you must pray, prayer is important. No doubt about it that prayer is one of the most important instructions that one should put down on their children. However, information of why they should pray, why your child should pray, why your child should get up and then do their namaz. What is it, the importance of getting up and facing Qibla, that is so important that they should leave their daily life and do this. So rather than just saying get up and pray, explain to them. So don't you want to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Don't you want to speak to your Creator? And you will see that children have a lot of questions. They will have questions about the Creator Himself, about God, the existence of God, the attributes of God. So it's important that the parents are educated so that they can educate the children in the same way. And through information, the children can then follow the parents rather than through just instructions.
So, if children would deviate from religion or grow up in giving up in religion, not have any sort of wish to be religious, could we say that it's the parents alone to blame, or does the society have the role? Is it totally the parents' fault? Because of course he might have been he would have maybe lacked the knowledge to inform the child and, for example, give him the system and the understanding and the teachings that he needs. So is it always the parents' fault, or is it society's blame as well? Do they take a part to it?
See, it's very difficult to generalize, and there is no always. People should understand that, firstly, there is always exceptions to the rule. So you have good parents that have deviated children sometimes. They've done everything correctly. They've done everything as they should, but the child is not as you'd expected. You look at the prophets. Nuh alayhi salam was one of the greatest prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet, the child of Nuh was one that was deviant from the righteous path. Now, and a prophet such as Nuh is infallible. So he does the best of instructions and information and the best way to raise his child. Yet the child does not come out as expected. So sometimes there are exceptions to the rule that regardless of what you do, the child will become deviant. However, there's a lot that we can do. And vice versa, by the way. The worst of people we see have the best children. Look at who fought alongside Amir alayhi salam in the Battle of Jamal. He was the son of the second. So the fact of the matter is that we can see that with regards to raising children, it is important to do what we can. The rest we leave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean that if, God forbid, a child becomes deviant, that it's definitely the parents' fault. However, 90 or 99% of the time, there is a direct relation between how you raise your children and how they end up at the end of the day. What environment you allow them to grow in. So the environment in which children grow in will ultimately influence their outcome. There is no doubt that if you allow an environment in which it is informative, in which it is religious, in which they are taught the right values without pressure, then the next step will be that they will take those values, they will act upon them, and they will grow step by step the way that you want them to. Whereas if you pressurize them, or if you teach them the wrong instructions, or not teach them at all, and leave society to raise your children, then they will pick up whatever they want from the streets and from the people around them. So it's of crucial importance that when you have children, you realize the responsibility of having children, which entails the responsibility of being with them. See, one of the
Afwan Mawlai, we've got a caller. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ramadan to Mubarak to both of you.
Ramadan Mubarak to you, brother. Your name, please?
My name is Mohsin. I was just having a little discussion with my niece, and a question came up. So I thought, why not ask the question to an alim, so he can explain it better than I can, and maybe other people might have relative questions to that.
That's excellent.
You know, Allah created Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, and then there are details what happened, etc., etc. I'm not really interested in those details at the moment. But when Hazrat Adam was created, he was put into Jannah. When Hazrat Adam was put into Jannah, he was, of course, initially alone. Hazrat Hawa was not created, or Eve was not created at that time. But then Allah created at a certain time after Hazrat Adam to accompany Hazrat Adam, or to, let's say, slightly stronger word, to serve Hazrat Adam alayhi salam. So from that, can it be concluded that the females, because this is in Quran Majid somewhere, I don't know where, and because Allah has put it in Quran Majid, that means it is a hidayat for us to implement in our life. From that, can it be concluded that the female or the zawja is created for the man? It is a one-way relationship, not both way. For instance, would it be right for me to say that my wife is actually my wife, Not that I'm her husband. Of course, I'm her husband, but she is my wife. I'm emphasizing the word my wife. Can Maulana speak about this, especially from Quranic ayahs? That will be appreciated, because my niece is actually, she's probably about 23, 24, something like that, and brought up in Britain. I think they want to know these questions.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ahsantum, dear brother Muhsin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all in this holy month, and I will endeavor to answer your question. See, first of all, with regards to the creation of humans, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did create Adam and then Hawa, or Eve, if you like. However, the creation of Adam and Hawa, the male and the female, was necessary for the human race to begin. Now, the issue is, what is the relationship between men and women, and the duties of men they have to their husbands and husbands to women? And you're asking whether it's a one-way street. I will answer that beginning with an ayah from the Holy Quran, as you requested. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rajjalu qawwamuna ala nisa. Ar-Rajjalu qawwamuna ala nisa. On the appearance of it, people think that it means that men are overpowering and are domineering of all women, and it's for women to serve them. When we look at the tafsirs and the riwayat of Ahl Bayt and other ayat, we see that that's not the case. With regards to Rajjal Qawwamun al Nisa, it seems that the ayah in fact is talking about the duties of men towards women, because this Qawwamun al Nisa is talking about the fact of the men having to bring substance to the woman.
So like the man becomes the wali of his wife.
Exactly. So you have substance that a man has to pay. There are certain duties that man has towards a woman. For example, substance. You must feed your wife. She does not need to work, she does not need to do anything, you must feed her. You must roof your wife. There must be a roof above her, shelter of some kind. You must also clothe your wife. Okay? These duties are to do with the man. So the man must leave the house, find substance for his family to survive. What is the duties of a wife to the husband? Only in the bedroom department. That's the only duty the wife has. Only.
That's it.
If they agree at the beginning of the marriage that she should cook or clean or raise the children or something else.
Even
but
cooking.
Religiously, no. She can charge for cooking. She can charge for breastfeeding. She can charge for raising the children, spending time with them. It doesn't happen, and it shouldn't happen in a correct marriage. But religiously, it is not her duty. She doesn't have to do it shar'an. So if she doesn't do it, she doesn't do the haram. If a wife does not breastfeed her child, she has not committed a haram. It's better if she does, as we read the ayah yesterday, or a few days ago, that 2 years a wife should, a mother should breastfeed the child. And we said the Holy Quran talks about the breastfeed being so important and so good for the child, and it must be for 2 years only. Recently the scientists and doctors have come to this conclusion. In any case, now the role of a man in society is different to the role of a woman in society. We talked about this on Friday, I think it was. They complete one another. And in the Holy Quran, you see the ayahs that, for example, say that the woman is a cover for a man, and a woman is a cover, and the man is cover for a woman. The wajib that is upon the lady will stop the man committing adultery, and will stop the man from looking lustfully at other women and so forth. The man's duty is to take care of his family. These two people complete one another, and they become one in a relationship, in a marriage. Okay? Yes, there are certain laws that the wife has to abide by. For example, most scholars say that if the woman wants to leave the house, she must seek permission from the husband. Okay? Now, this is another thing that is becomes challenging in the Western societies, that we see in some of the rawayat, some of the ahadith of Akhir al-Zaman, the end of our time, that the women will be outside and the men will be inside the house. That's already happened.
The roles have been switched.
The role have been, unfortunately now we see one of the
stay-at-home dad, for example.
Stay-at-home dads, exactly, and the mums who work. This is not the Islamic values that we've been taught. Islam says the man is to work, the woman is to not to work. The woman's position is to stay at home. What she does at home, how she does at home is her responsibility. But the point is, her place is at home. Up to the point that the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best places for anyone to be. A mosque, a masjid, is the best place for a lady to be, or for a man to be, correct?
Yes.
So if a woman was to go anywhere apart from a house, it should be the mosque. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-masjidu al-mar'a baytuha. The mosque of a lady is her house. So stay in your house, Allah will give you
the thawab,
the barakah, the malaika will come, the angels will come. Stay in your house. A woman that stays in the house can take care of the family and keep control over them.
Exactly.
If it was the other way around, then the whole system changes. Because as we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best of who should be in charge of what. Allah says, you know what, man, you work. Woman, you don't need to work. Together, they make up this household that is of shared responsibilities. It's not an issue of a one-way street that I own a female or I own a wife and the wife must do this. No, that's not the case. Marriage and life is about compromises. And the children will learn from that. So even if you have a wife from abroad that she might listen to you for 2-3 days, the fact is your children will not follow that. So it needs to be in the right Islamic guidance. And with good akhlaq and with kindness to one another and compassionateness to one another. So that the responsibility that you have as a wife and a husband, you live together. We understand that it's very difficult to raise children. The wife and the father must become one. Both have one voice. Otherwise, the children will become confused of what their duty is. If they hear one voice from the father, one voice from the mother, they won't know which to choose. Anytime there is instructions from the parents, it should be one instruction echoed by both partners, female and male. It is a responsibility and a weight that is lifted by both parties of the same strength. They should lift it together. If in the West you will be successful in raising children, then it's of absolute importance and significance that the wife and the husband have a harmonious marriage. If this marriage breaks down, whether it breaks down on the outside, where they take a divorce and it's finished, or internally, it's broken, but on the outside it looks fine. The children know the truth. And the children will pick up on it. It becomes that much harder to make sure that they're on the straight and narrow. Children nowadays are very different to what they were 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Is it because of the technology that they have so much access?
Everything. Just as the generation before them was different to them, every generation is different. Hence, Amir al-Mu'minin says in a hadith to this madmoon that the bringing up of children, or in this way, that bring up your children different to the way that you were brought up in your own time. So basically, bring them up according to the time that they're in, not to the past. Because every time requires different laws. 1,000 years ago required different ways to raise your children. 100 years ago required different laws. Now you're required a different way to raise your children.
How will we know which way is correct?
Okay, so one of the things that we spoke about day before yesterday, that for a man to use violence against his wife or children will have an adverse effect. Okay? on most occasions, it is a simple matter that the father or the mother should sit down with the children and explain things. So rather than say, you know what, you have to do this or you have to do that and now and so forth, simple instructions, explain to them, inform them from an early age. You'll be surprised how clever children are and how much they take in. Start explaining to them. Not to hit them in the back of the head that you must eat this, but instead say, you know what, this is good for you, this is bad for you, it's up to you. Because eventually, regardless of what you do, they will leave the house and they will have their own choices to make. So it's better to create a child that does, to have a child that is raised in a way that the child does the same and acts the same at home in front of you as he does when he leaves the door. So your challenge is this, to bring up children that are honest and one-faced, not two-faced. They do in front of you as they do when your back is turned.
So basically choosing to do good rather than being forced to do good.
Exactly. And the best way to do that is to be the role models. If you yourself don't pray, you cannot say, you know what, why don't you get up and pray? If you yourself only read the Quran in Ramadan, you can't throughout the year expect them to read the Quran. If you yourself can't read the Quran, you can't expect them to want to read the Quran. So the point is for you to teach them with practice and actions rather than words. They would follow and mimic the actions of the parent much better than if you just tell them do this or do that. Even if you give them instructions and you've acted upon them, they're much more likely to act upon it. There's a hadith that says a person who gives advice and he doesn't act upon the advice that he gives, his advice is like a drop of water on a glass. It just slides off the hearts of the people he's giving it to. It doesn't stay there, it doesn't have any effect.
From the aspect of socializing with non-Muslims, someone may argue that a valid solution would be to isolate my children, homeschool them, and strictly keep them to Muslim environment and Muslim friends. Is that a solution? Is that correct for a parent to do to a child, or would that cause problems to the child in the future?
In some places, it is good to have the child surrounded by religious people, people that are the same understanding of school of thought. However, they must also have the ability eventually that when they are faced with questions, when they are faced with challenges, when they are challenged about their own faith, they have enough knowledge, understanding and ability to overcome it. Otherwise, if you surround them with wool and cotton, when they open the doors and leave the house,
they'll be weak.
Exactly. Then they cannot stand on their own 2 feet. The point is, you've got to have a right balance, that they are exposed enough so they know what goes on, they know why they believe what they believe, they know why they practice, and they can answer anyone that wants to challenge them on what they believe.
So again, we're coming down to the community as a whole. And speaking of community, does the Muslim community in the Western society is held responsible for raising these children altogether, not just giving all the, how could I say, to the parents the fault or the responsibility, but rather as a whole, as a Muslim community, by having madrasas and having resident alims and sending our children to these madrasas and educating them in order for them to grow up and themselves be able to distinguish good and evil, good and bad. So how important would be that to have a Muslim community in the West?
You see, regardless of how big of a community you are, you must have unity between the community. It is imperative that anywhere around the world that you're seeing this program right now, you understand the significance of unity in that particular community. The less you're unified, there isn't a thing you can do. If it's the time that we have challenges amongst us, those challenges cannot be faced with a divided community. A community as a whole needs to face these challenges. If shaitan comes in our lives in a way that we spend our time bickering about one another and this person and the other, even the leaders, the worst thing about our time is the leaders are bickering against each other and having infighting amongst themselves. It's a very challenging and difficult time. The point is, unity is the number one need of all our communities across the world. That's one. When you have unity, then you can sit down, the elders can sit down with the help of the youth. The youth must be involved in decision making. There is no way you can have an organization or a society to serve the youth unless there is input from the youth, because you will be out of touch of what they want and what they need. So then, unless you bring them into the whole process and involve them in the process of these organizations, in these communities, you will have a separate organization for yourselves and a separate one they will form for themselves. So the best thing to do is involve the youth in whichever organization you want to serve them. Allow them to choose for themselves what they need. And then that community, if it does and manages to unify itself and organize itself to serve its youth, can then start to reap the benefits. It is essential that the programs that are set out for the youth are enjoyable for them, that are informative for them, that are not repetitive for them. If you have, for example, education must be done in a playful manner. If you're going to build a mosque or a center, make sure there is a play area next to it, somewhere where they can play football or foosball or whatever that they want to play, so that they come for the sake of having fun. With having fun, they learn. If you beat them with a stick, they will not learn. Even if they learn, it's just artificial, it's superficial. Allow them to come by their own will, because they enjoy themselves, and teach them through that manner. Then hopefully you can have something that is sustainable and they'll carry on coming and coming.
How could we promote such a system where our children would be delighted to come and learn? How do we do it in practice?
As I said, in practice, you for example, you have sports facilities next to the centers. So they have sports and they have education. They have a place where they have fun, activities and so forth, and at the same time they listen to the member and they listen to the lecture. So it's not something that is boring, and it's not something that they have to be forced to come and do. It's something they come from their own will and they enjoy it. See, it is not the time when children can be forced into anything. They need to be encouraged and helped into a community, into a system that can help them become better human beings, more mature, more religious, and not by forcing them, but by allowing them to choose themselves.
Is this happening in reality?
In some places, to a certain degree, yes, it is happening. Some members of our community, mashallah, they are very active, they are doing this. Others are not. The biggest challenge that we see is people, the parents are very distant with their children. That all the time we see, especially the fathers, they're out there spending their time working from various hours and traveling and so forth. And if you tell the husband or the father, why is it that you work? He will reply to you that I'm working to sustain my family and allow them to have a very good level of life. However, the reality is, if you ask the children and the wife, they will say that it will be more than happy with the bare minimum as long as we're together and the family unit is happy. When the father is not in the unit, then the whole system breaks down. So it's essential that the fathers spend time in the family unit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, يَضِلُّ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide those that He wants and will belittle those that He wants. Guidance is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a case that the father should make sure that each of his children have X amount in their bank accounts or X amount of financial security. Instead, allow them to have peace within themselves and faith, and that knowledge is more important. And if they have knowledge and they have faith and they have taqwa, then they can become complete human beings without your financial assistance. Whereas if you leave it out for a long time and you come back to the family, you'll find that your children have grown up and you no longer can take part in their lives.
You don't have any influence.
You don't have any influence anymore. It's too late. So before it's too late, I'd advise the fathers and the husbands to take a more active role in the lives of their children.
So if a parent is forced in order to maintain and sustain his family working all day, and this is happening in most of the households these days, and most of the time even the mother has to go and work. So when both the parents are absent from the house and the children either grow up whether with a caretaker or in best cases with their grandpa and grandma, how will the parent be able to provide this to his child?
It is very difficult, if not impossible. Hence, this is what I'm talking about. Islam says the woman doesn't need to work. Do not force your wives or even allow your wives to leave the children, because if the children are left unattended, they're left in a way where someone else needs to raise them, then you will lose control over them eventually. When you come back, when you've made enough money, you come back and try and guide them in the right direction, it is too late. So the fact of the matter is that at the very least, the wife or the mother needs to spend their time or the most quality time with them. At the same time, the father needs to spend time with them as much as possible as well. Wealth and money is good for security. However, this comes first. Even if you have less money, it is more important that you spend more time with your family and with your children.
This would happen in case if the man could provide for the essentials, and you might say we don't need more than that. So the wife could stay at home and take care of the children. But what happens when the father is working all day and the money he earns isn't enough to cover the expenses? So obviously the wife is forced.
A lot of times it's not the case the money isn't enough. A lot of times, in many cases, not all cases, in many cases, the issue is that people want more and more and more. The key to happiness is being content. If you're not content, you'll never be happy. If you're content with the little that you have, the one-bedroom apartment that you have, you'll be happy. If you're not content, if you have a mansion, you still won't be happy and you want more and more and more. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people do what they do in the fear that maybe one day they'll become hungry, so they should have all these savings and so forth. In reality, that never happens. In reality, they should think about today and leave tomorrow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for them if they do what they can. So the husband does all the things that he can and leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In no way in the ayat and the riwayah says the wife should go out and work. The fact of the matter is, whatever the man brings, they can be content with what they have. And allow that money to have barakah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring barakah into their house, and with contentness they can enjoy their lives.
So again, we'd come back to the issue that we as human beings, or personally us followers of Ahlul Bayt, should stop seeking materialistic satisfaction and focus on the spiritual satisfaction. So that's, I guess, maybe the solution to these issues.
Yeah, and for those people that have lost a child or a family, God forbid, or a member of the family, they know how important health is. They know how important it is to have your family with you. Those who have health, alhamdulillah, and have iman, sometimes don't know that the preciousness of that blessing until it's taken away from them.
Exactly.
So spend that little time that you have with your children, rather than spending it trying to gain more wealth and more power that is never ending, and you'll never quench that thirst of this materialistic things.
Ahsantum Shaykhna. Well, I've got a couple of questions before we come to the completion of our program today. I would like to ask you, in your opinion, what do you think Is it harder raising a son or a daughter in a Western society?
I think it depends on who you ask and which person is asked that question. I don't think it's a generalization that can be made. Many people will say it's daughters that are most difficult. However, I've not had experience with that, so I wouldn't know. So I presume it's who you ask that will give you a different answer. But the fact of the matter is, with the challenges that we face, regardless of whether you have a daughter or a son, it is extremely difficult to raise your children correctly, and it is extremely hard to have them in the righteous path. So the best thing to do is spend a lot of time with them, try and give them as much love and affection, education, information as possible, and the rest ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you with.
Ahsantum Shaykhna. Would you like to give any last recommendations to our brothers and sisters who are viewing us concerning this matter before we close, inshallah?
Yes, the last thing that I would say before going is near to Maghrib time is that in the holy month of Ramadan there are some ahadith that says من حسن خلقه في شهر رمضان وجبت عليه الجنة. Whoever betters his behavior and his akhlaq in the month of Ramadan, Allah will make it compulsory for him or her to go into heaven. So it's very important for us to work on our akhlaq and our behavior in this holy month, especially with our children that may be around us, especially on the weekends and the days off, and not to snap at them, not to get angry. Instead, take the anger in and come out with a smile when it comes to children, so that children can see that what they get from their parents is that love and affection. And if it is a time when they don't receive that smile, there is a very good reason for it, not the fact that they're just tired or hungry. Once again, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us in the right path, inshallah, and our children, our grandchildren, to be guided in the right path and be of those that our Imam is pleased with and it is proud of, inshallah.
Inshallah. Dear brothers and sisters, I would like to inform you for today we have completed our program, alhamdulillah. I hope that the details and information that Sheikh Ali Ma'asumian has provided has been as beneficial to me as to you, and we would like to wish you a blissful iftar, inshallah, with your families. And please remember us in your du'as, and remember, stay tuned, because after Maghrib Salah, inshallah, and for the following du'as, we shall have a live appeal for Zahra Trust, and we would like you to stay with us, inshallah, and view it. Thank you very much, and hope to see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.